After spending much of the weekend cleaning up my fish room, I decided to shoot a video showing it. While this is really clean by my standards, it's no means perfectly neat by anyone else's. You can see my cable management sucks. I'm not super big on DIY projects, even though there's a lot of them going on in here. Basically, I build the things I need because I can't buy them or they're too expensive, not because I enjoy working on the projects. It's working with the livestock is what I actually enjoy doing. This is not a traditional fish room in the sense that I don't have any filtration for my display tanks in here. There was a brief time I thought about drilling some holes into the walls and putting my sump in here, but because I don't really plan on living here too long, I didn't think it was a good idea. It's one thing to add extra circuits and GFCIs. For me at least, it's another thing to run PVC pipe through different rooms in the house. So we'll take a look at my various tanks. I have this 10-gallon soft coral Nano Reef. This has been going for about 4 years. There's just a couple of sexy shrimp in here. Most of them have aged out. And then I have one Ocellaris Clownfish. There was a pair and I was hoping they would start laying any time, but unfortunately somehow one of them jumped. With that being the case, I've put a little lid on top or netting cover. But they were in here for almost 2 years and I don't know what the heck spooked them. This room is very low traffic. With that being the case, I will eventually get some new fish for this tank. Below the Nano Reef, I have some baby maroons. These guys are 4 or 5 weeks old and you can see they're already trying to kill each other. I have tried using different things for them to hide in, but I find they don't actually use them very much. And it's just easier to clean the tank when there's not too much in here. There is a bit of a tint to this tank. There still is some phytoplankton in the water. Below that, I have a Copepod Culture. This is just various pods. It looks like a big mess, and it kind of is, but the Copepods actually, they don't really care too much about water quality. You'll see there's no aeration and no heat. It's just room temperature, and it seems to work fine. My main frag tank is a 50-gallon Moboy. Since this is a shot with my phone, the colors are kind of off, but that's fine. I have various types of frags, and some of those frags have become colonies. Since I'm not really able to unload a lot of corals locally, I've just been holding them while I slowly wait for the pandemic to end in Canada. With that being the case, I have added an auxiliary frag tank. This is a weird sized tank. It looks like it's a 20-gallon long, but it's actually 14 inches front to back. I picked it up used and maybe invested $100 in setting it up, and it's working out fine. Eventually I will probably use this primarily for fully grown out frags, but for now I just put some stuff in here from the other frag tank. You can see I do have some baby clownfish in here, and yeah, they're fighting in here too. Since we're in lockdown number 3 and it's actually not that easy to find PVC parts here, I'm using soft tubing disguised with these elbows with just a maxi jet from the frag tank sump pumping in a little bit of water. It does have a proper Durso drain with no cap, so it's quite loud, but that doesn't really matter because this is a low traffic area and the door is usually closed. I just have a black box for lighting for now. Maybe one day I'll upgrade it, but again, this is just to store extra corals. Under the auxiliary frag tank, I have my phytoplankton set up. The airline tubing is a little bit of a mess. I need to get another spool of tubing and then maybe I'll clean this up. But this is working out pretty good for me. These are all Nanochloropsis. Eventually I plan on getting other species of phytoplankton. But right now I'm using a ton, primarily to feed my rotifers, also the copepods, and then I've been dosing quite a bit in my reef tanks as well. While I do culture copepods, it's mostly just fun projects for future fish breeding. I have tons in my tank since they're all set up with real live rock. Over here there's actually a freshwater tank, but it doesn't belong to me. It's just my wife's extra tank. She has a beta in here, and we just stuck it in here because otherwise the cats would get into it. I have some more clownfish here. These ones have real nice patterns, but they also have pretty much torn up fins since they hate each other. Over here I've got more Copepods, and then I just started this one for fun. It's got a bunch of amphipods in it. I had this one rock that was just filled with them, so I stuck them in this little 2-gallon tank. There's a door here, but I had to block it. I never actually use this door ever, so it's not a big deal. And since it's humid as hell in here with this many tanks, I try and leave the window cracked whenever possible. Normally there is a dehumidifier in here running too, but that recently burned out and I haven't gotten around to replacing it. Here are my older clownfish. Some of them, they do look a little weird and maybe not perfect, but then there's some real nice ones in here as well. I don't know why this is looking so overexposed. There we go. This one here is like almost completely white. Below the older guys, there's some really young ones. These ones are 3 weeks old, I believe. They're pretty much all just getting their stripes now. And it won't be long until they too are trying to kill each other. Under them, I have one of my rotifer cultures. I just use 5-gallon buckets. And then I have a larger tank that has more clownfish in it. This tank actually does have an overflow box. It's actually one of those shadow overflow boxes that's real nice, but the previous owner plumbed it really weird and I can't really cut the plumbing. It's too close, so I had to angle the tank in the corner because the pipes stick out too far, and I've just never gotten around to adding a sump to it. Since it's just holding extra clownfish, I just have sponge filters going for now. You'll see I do have quite a few inkbird controllers. I find them to be pretty accurate and inexpensive. With these small little tanks, it's very important to control the temperature, otherwise they'll end up cooking or freezing the larvae. This tank has the newest babies that just hatched on Wednesday. It was a relatively small clutch, so there's not too many in here. And I'm also using a 10-gallon tank instead of the normal 5. I have another rotifer culture here. And finally, I have a Copepod culture over here. I went with Copepod mostly because they were easy to obtain. Eventually, I do want to start more dedicated Copepod cultures. But you can see this one is going pretty good. Finally, I have my dead protein skimmers. Well, actually, the ATI one still works. I just don't have a tank big enough for it. And then I have a Bubble King 200 from way back when. The impeller on the pump broke, and basically to replace the impeller, it would be cheaper to buy a cheap protein skimmer. I did actually clean this up. I guess it's still a mess, but here's all my test kits, food, medication, supplies, plumbing parts, salt, and that's pretty much it. Ideally, I would have a basement that would have a lot more room and a lot more tanks, but this is what I'm working with. The room is big enough for what I have in here now, but I'm not really sure what else I can fit in. Overall, this was pretty poorly planned and probably underfunded, and I'm not a great DIY person, but I've made it work for the most part. If you have any questions about my setup, leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as soon as possible. Thanks for watching and happy reefing.